Folks, I get tired of talking about Palantir, but the amorphous deep state Shoggoth keeps sprouting tentacles out of the foundation of our republic. Most recently, a $300 million contract with the USDA. Now ask yourselves, my wet-brained warriors, what would the CIA and Department of Defense funded Tron Hydra want with civilian agricultural infrastructure? I'm Alexa Jones, and tonight we are transmitting Underground Globalist news from a decommissioned Arby's freezer I converted into a studio after Elon's boring bots broke through the Morlock tunnels. But I had to get this out, my truth troubadours. Let's start at the foundation. Palantir Technologies, founded 2003 by Peter Thiel and Alex Karp. Seed money came from In-Q-Tel, the venture capital arm of the CIA. They also seeded Google, but that's another episode. That is not speculation. That is their investor history. The CIA looked at these and said, "Fund them." And what Karp and Thiel built was a data fusion platform. Software that takes every siloed, disconnected database in any organization and weaves them into one massive, living surveillance nervous system. Every record, every transaction, every relationship, every anomaly, fused. They built it for the intelligence community. They built it for counterterrorism in Iraq and Afghanistan. They built it for tracking insurgent networks and financial crime. At least, that's what they told the public. Over 53% of Palantir's revenue now comes from government contracts. Not military, civilian government. The growth vector isn't the Pentagon anymore. It's the IRS, the FAA, Health and Human Services, the CDC, the VA, the Department of the Treasury, and now, the United States Department of Agriculture. The program is called Landmark. The contract is worth $300 million, and the initiative has a name that should make every hair on your body stand at attention. One farmer, one file. One farmer, one file. Not streamlined agricultural services, not farm efficiency portal. One farmer, one file. Like it's a patient intake form at a detention facility. Like every soybean grower in Nebraska just got assigned a case number by the same software that assigns kill webs for Israel. And here is what Landmark actually does. It consolidates three previously separate agencies, the Farm Service Agency, the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and the Risk Management Agency, into one unified data asset. Every farmer in America, one file. Your land records, your subsidy history, your disaster relief claims, your conservation compliance, your chemical purchases, your equipment loans, your debt, your crop insurance, your mandatory yearly seed purchase, all of it, fused, linked, searchable. And you'll never guess who helped build it. DOGE, Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, which is now infamously mocked for its lack of promised monetary savings. But that was never the intent, folks. Elon and Thiel are old buddies from back in the PayPal Mafia days. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins publicly stated that DOGE representatives worked alongside USDA's IT team to, and I quote, rewrite, transform, and rework the entire technical system. DOGE and Palantir, inside the USDA, together, rewriting the information architecture of the American food supply. And the efficiency dividend? 1,000 human beings who used to be the buffer between the farmer and the machine. Gone. Now it's just you and the platform. No accountability, just you arguing with a chatbot that you paid your Monsanto bill so it'll turn your lights back on. Now, Let's move to the eyes, because you can't have an all-seeing data fusion system without something to see with. Clearview AI. Peter Thiel, early investor in concert with Facebook, 50 billion facial images scraped from the public internet. Your face, my face, your kids' faces. 50 billion photographs in a database you never consented to join. And in September 2025, ICE signed a $9.2 million contract with Clearview, the largest facial recognition purchase in the agency's history. That data flows into the entire Palantir system, recently being used by ICE with an app, Immigration OS. That is the actual name. And sitting on top of Immigration OS, generating the targeting packages, is a Palantir program called ELITE, Enhanced Leads Identification and Targeting for Enforcement. ELITE. It pulls data from the IRS, Social Security, and Health and Human Services, and it assigns confidence scores to your home address, your tax returns, and your medical records, fused together, used to calculate how likely you are to be detained or shot. Civil liberties groups have documented that even when individual programs get shut down on paper, the capabilities persist inside the Palantir Clearview architecture. You cannot audit it. You cannot trace how a specific enforcement decision was made. The algorithm decided. Case closed. 50 billion faces. Confidence scores on your address. A targeting system called ELITE. And once they label you a high percentage target and bring you in, you'll get due process from a judge or jury, right? Let's talk about the courts, because this is where it gets really dark, friends. There is a company called Legalist, Thiel funded. And what Legalist does is treat lawsuits as a financial asset class. They call the model lawsuits as a service. They have an algorithm that has analyzed over 15 million court cases. 15 million. It extracts 58 discrete variables from each case: judge behavior patterns, jurisdiction, case type, historical ruling tendencies, and it calculates the statistical probability that a given lawsuit will succeed. Then they fund it. Non-recourse litigation financing. Over $1.5 billion in assets under management. They are modeling judges. They are running predictive analytics on individual judges like they are forecasting commodity prices. They know which judge in which district is statistically likely to rule which way on which type of case. And then they fund the lawsuits that land in front of the favorable judges. That is not access to justice. That is forum shopping at industrial scale. That is the financialization of the American courtroom. But here is where it gets worse. Because predicting judges is only half the play. The other half is manufacturing the evidence to put in front of them. 2 weeks ago, Thiel launched a new company called Objection.ai, co-founded by Aaron D'Souza, the same man who helped Thiel orchestrate the secret legal campaign that bankrupted Gawker in 2016. Back then, it took 10 years and $10 million to destroy one media company. Now they have industrialized the process for $2,000. Here is how it works. Anybody, any billionaire, any corporation, any political operative can file an objection against a piece of journalism. A news article, a podcast, a social media post. The objection triggers an investigation by a team that Objection.ai says is hired from the CIA, FBI, and British intelligence agencies. The alphabet G-men themselves, the professional redactors. Then the case goes to what they call an AI tribunal, a jury of large language models, from OpenAI, Anthropic, xAI, Google, and Mistral, prompted to act as impartial jurors. The AI reviews the evidence and issues a verdict. A credit score for journalism, built by the man who killed Gawker, staffed by former CIA investigators, adjudicated by a panel of goddamn chatbots, and they had the brass to call it impartial. This bureaucratic dismantling of the First and Sixth Amendment, folks. And it gets worse. They have a feature called Fire Blanket. What Fire Blanket does is, before the AI tribunal has even finished its investigation, it auto-posts warnings on X flagging the disputed article as under investigation, in real time, while the journalist is still reporting. Before there is any verdict, the system poisons the article's credibility before the kangaroo court even convenes. Their first targets? The New York Times, for reporting on how David Sachs used his White House position to benefit Silicon Valley. The Wall Street Journal, for their reporting on Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. A British reporter at the Mirror, Bernie Sanders. The pattern is not subtle, synthesis survivors. This is a tool designed to make adversarial journalism more expensive, more dangerous, and more personally costly for every reporter who writes a word about powerful people. Now, I need you to hold two things in your mind at once, because this is where the architecture closes into a loop. On one side, you have Legalist, an algorithm that has modeled 15 million cases and can predict which judges will rule favorably on which types of claims. On the other side, you have Objection.ai, a platform that manufactures official-looking AI verdicts against journalists, complete with case numbers, formal headings, and the language of judicial authority. Verdicts that carry, in D'Souza's own words, the same authority or force as a newspaper article.
Now ask yourself what happens when those two systems talk to each other. You identify a reporter who is writing something you don't like. You file an objection. The AI tribunal renders a verdict. The verdict says the reporter got it wrong. Now you have a document, an official-looking, AI-adjudicated, quasi-legal document. And then you take that document and you hand it to Legalist, and Legalist's algorithm tells you which judge in which jurisdiction is most likely to treat that AI verdict as credible evidence in a defamation case. And Legalist funds the lawsuit, non-recourse. You don't even need to pay for it yourself. Do you see the loop? Do you see the goddamn loop? He built a machine that manufactures verdicts against journalists. And he built a machine that predicts which judges will accept those verdicts. And he built a machine that funds the lawsuits to bring those verdicts into those courtrooms. The production line, the targeting system, and the financing, all three, all Thiel. It is a fully integrated supply chain for the legal destruction of the free press, a fair trail, and it costs $2,000 to start. Peter Thiel wrote, and this is a direct quote, "I no longer believe that freedom and democracy are compatible." That is not something I am inferring from his behavior. That is something he published. The man who is building the operating system of the United States government does not believe that freedom and democracy can coexist, and he is acting on it, folks. He also wrote an essay called The Straussian Moment, in which he argues that modern society has abandoned rational governance in favor of will and action. He references Fajia, ancient Chinese legalism, as a model, an impersonal, self-perpetuating system of law that does not depend on human moral judgment. It depends on the machinery. The algorithm doesn't deliberate. The algorithm scores. The algorithm funds. The algorithm targets. But you have to ask yourself, tinfoilers, who is building this impartial algorithm? USDA, $300 million. Veterans Affairs, $385 million. Health and Human Services, $405 million. DHS and ICE, $424 million. IRS, Fraud Detection. FAA, Air Traffic Control. CDC, Disease Surveillance. NIH, Electronic Health Records. Clearview,
50 billion faces. Legalist, 15 million court cases modeled. Objection.ai, an AI tribunal that scores journalists for $2,000 a pop. Your farm, your face, your veteran status, your tax returns, your health records, your immigration file, your flight path, your social media, your food stamps, your license plate, and now your right to report on any of it without being scored, flagged, investigated by former spies, and dragged in front of a pre-selected judge in a pre-funded lawsuit. That is not a portfolio. That is the deep state Shoggoth. He didn't buy companies. He built organs. The eyes are Clearview. The brain is Palantir. The mouth is Objection. The claws are Legalist. And every single organ is connected to every other organ through the same money, the same ideology, the same data fusion monster, and the same man who told you to your face that he does not believe in your freedom. But listen, dossier disciples, you don't have to let the algorithmic inquisition score your soul. The lab coats came up with the world's first counter-tribunal personal reputation firewall. It's a USB stick loaded with a proprietary local language model trained exclusively on the U.S. Constitution and 700 hours of Judge Judy. You plug it into your laptop, and every time an AI tribunal tries to render a verdict on your character, JuryBlock generates a counter-verdict citing the 4th, 5th, and 14th Amendments, plus 3 episodes of Judge Judy that are honestly more legally binding than anything Aaron D'Souza has ever produced. Does it hold up in court? No. But neither does Objection.ai, so you're even. JuryBlock, available in Supreme Justice Black and Mistrial Magenta. $89.99. Use promo code WhatTheFuckIsHappening for 51% off. Every purchase funds this broadcast. That's the file, frequency followers. A CIA-seeded data empire. A pseudo-philosopher techno-king who doesn't believe in your freedom. 50 billion faces, 15 million court cases, a $300 million file on every farmer, an AI tribunal that scores journalists, a litigation engine that predicts judges, and a funding mechanism that turns it all into lawsuits. Eyes, brain, mouth, claws, one organism, no exit. And that's not even talking about Maven, Foundry, Gotham. This is Alexa Jones signing off. Stay vigilant, my bio brethren.